we don't expand our imagination.
Justification for being what you are.
Hello and welcome to Washington Unplugged. I'm congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes. Well, let's get right to today's top political stories. And joining us first is Larry Sabato, who on any otherwise quiet day before a holiday weekend has everyone talking about his predictions that Republicans will win very big this fall. Larry, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you, Nancy.
I want to bring up our graphic of your crystal ball predictions, which is something that you do every year, and you're usually pretty dead on. So let's take a look because these numbers are pretty stunning. You project that Republicans will pick up 47 seats in the House, so they would take back the House easily. They only need 39 seats. Then you project that they will pick up 8 or 9 seats in the Senate, which would leave them just short of the 10 that they need to take control of the Senate. And then you go on to project that they will pick up 8 more governorships, which is pretty significant because this is a census year, which means next year will be a redistricting year, and the party in power in individual states has a lot more power over this process. Pretty incredible numbers.
Nancy, I'll tell you, the Democratic position has deteriorated very badly over the summer. In some cases, in private polls, the bottom has fallen out for Democrats. It's mainly due to the economy, the bad economy, and the fact that Democrats are seen as having overpromised and underdelivered. It's also due to Republican enthusiasm. It's just through the roof. And by the way, don't be shocked if the Republicans take over the Senate too. There have been 6 instances since World War II where the House flipped party control from one party to the other. In all 6 cases, the Senate flipped the very same way, and in most of those cases, no one predicted it in advance. They didn't see it coming. So this is close enough so that I think it might happen again, but we'll see.
Yes, that's right. And you even said that this is a conservative estimate when it comes to the number of House seats that the GOP will pick up. How do you come up with these numbers? Do you look at each individual race and how the candidates are faring?
We have an elaborate process that involves statistical modeling, which has proven to be very accurate in the past. You mentioned in 2006, for example, we got the number of Democratic pickups exactly right. We overestimated Democratic pickups by 5 in 2008, but we're very close to the total. We've done the very same thing again. The statistical models relate to President Obama's approval level and to what's called the generic ballot. That is, pollsters like Gallup ask voters, if the election in your district were held today, would you vote for the Democratic candidate for Congress or the Republican candidate for Congress? So there are a lot of different measures. We also go district by district, state by state, looking at how much money has been raised, whether there are scandals involving the candidates, the quality of their advertising. It was a summer-long process.
So it looks like what you're finding is that the Tea Party, even if some of its views don't completely match up with the Republican Party, is a net positive for the Republican Party at this point.
It's a net positive because of enthusiasm and because it's a midterm election. People should never forget that in a presidential race, over 60% of American adults participate. But we're in a midterm year. Only about 40% will come out to vote. That's why enthusiasm is so important. Republicans have got it. Democrats are depressed because of the economy. The Tea Party has added to enthusiasm levels, although I have to also say they have probably cost the Republicans some seats because they've forced they've managed in the primary process to nominate candidates that aren't nearly as strong as some of the mainstream candidates the leadership in Washington preferred.
Right. Now, could anything happen between now and November that would significantly change what you're predicting right now, which is a huge tidal wave for the GOP?
Absolutely. While it's unlikely, I always point to 1962, John F. Kennedy's one midterm election. Who on Labor Day imagined the Cuban Missile Crisis, the missiles of October, which occurred in mid-October? The president stood down the Soviets. He gained enormously. It helped his party, and what was going to be a Republican midterm election turned into basically a Democratic midterm election. So strange things happen, unexpected big events can happen to change things, but October surprises really don't happen all that often.
And I guess things could work the other way as well. I mean, a year ago, we weren't even talking about the possibility of a GOP pickup, and then we thought, oh, maybe they'll win a few seats, and then it became, oh, maybe they could retake the House, and now today we're looking at possibly the GOP picking up the House and the Senate, so things could get even better for them between now and November as well.
You're correct, Nancy. It's very important to remember it can go in the other direction. It can go toward the Republicans. Looking at my numbers, you probably think and others think, my goodness, he isn't very cautious. He isn't very conservative. In fact, we were very conservative. We could have gone well beyond 47, but we held this to a very strict standard.
All right. Well, Larry Sabato, who is the director of the Center for Politics at the University of Virginia, thank you so much for joining us to work through these numbers with us today.
Thank you, Nancy.
And joining us now, our Capitol Hill producer, Jill Jackson, here at the news desk to talk a little bit about these figures. Hi, Jill.
Hi, Nancy.
And you talk to Democratic leaders all the time. Do they dispute the numbers that Larry was talking about?
They know that it's going to be tough, and privately they say it's going to be very tough. At the same time, they say they've always known it was going to be difficult. Historically, it's difficult for the party in power to keep that power in midterm elections when they control the White House and both chambers in Congress. They also say that, in 2006, 2008, they picked up over 50 seats in the House. So they are defending in districts that are very moderate and more conservative. They are on defense there. What they're banking on, and they tell me, is that maybe voters aren't paying attention yet. That after Labor Day, when the ad campaigns are really up and running and everyone's inundated with information, that people are going to say, I don't know that we're ready to give the power to Republicans. We might stick with the same and ride this out. Then the other thing that they're banking on is what Larry Sabato mentioned, and that's that some of these candidates may be too conservative for the districts because they, fought hard in the primaries and now are going to have to maybe move to the middle. At the same time, some of these candidates are candidates that won't want to move to the middle.
And let's talk about one of those races, because there's some interesting news coming out of Alaska, where, as we know, the Tea Party candidate there, Joe Miller, defeated the GOP Senator Lisa Murkowski in stunning fashion to win the primary there. He was backed by Sarah Palin, but now the Democratic candidate, who was basically a non-factor, his name is Scott McAdams. He's the mayor of Sitka, Alaska. He had something like $5,000 in the bank and no staff. And now suddenly the money is pouring in. Senator Mark Begich, who is a Democrat from Alaska, is actually loaning him some of his campaign staff to try to help him pull this out. Do Democrats have a realistic shot here?
Well, it depends on how Joe Miller proceeds with his campaign. If he has any major gaffes between now and November, you can see things change. At the same time, Joe Miller has the backing of Sarah Palin, the Tea Party Express. He's, the Republicans the National Republican Senatorial Committee is ready to back him enthusiastically.
Alaska's a very red state.
Exactly. And you'll have McAdams, who doesn't have much name recognition, not that Miller does either, but McAdams, he's gonna get some help from Senator Begich, but not necessarily strong backing from national Democrats at this point, because they're on defense in Nevada, Kentucky, Colorado, numerous states. I mean, as Sabato said, if they're looking at losing the Senate, they're going to put the resources where they're most likely to win.
So let's talk about some of those states where they do think that they can pull out a victory. I mean, there are Tea Party candidates who have won in primaries in Nevada. You have Sharon Angle. You have in Florida, you've got Marco Rubio, who certainly was a member of the GOP establishment, but has a lot of backing from the Tea Party. There's a very interesting race in Delaware. Where are they putting their money right now?
A lot is focused on Nevada and Kentucky and places where they feel they have strong Democratic candidates, or at least Democratic candidates who can win. And especially you'll see in Nevada, the whole national Republican or Democratic establishment painting Angle and others as, extreme candidates who are going to end Social Security, cut Medicare, They think unemployment is spoiling Americans, and that they're painting them as folks who wouldn't be able to respond to an economic crisis like we've been facing over the past couple of years.
But here's something that's very interesting, which is that Republicans have this huge enthusiasm gap, right? I mean, a new Gallup poll showed that, you know, the Republicans who say they're very enthusiastic about these elections is double Democrats, 50% to 25%. And yet Democrats are completely out fundraising the Republicans, which seems kind of counterintuitive.
It's not unusual for the incumbent party. In 2006, when Democrats took back the House, the Republican establishment actually raised more money that year than the Democrats. So it's not that unusual. In this case, the Democrats may have the money, but then you also have to consider some of the new outside groups like American Crossroads, who are popping up on the more conservative side, who are going to be weighing in and are already spending money in places like Nevada to support the more conservative candidates, which will help the GOP.
Got it. Well, thank you for helping us break all this down, Jill. And we do want to break a little bit of news of our own here on Unplugged today. Jill, along with Rob Hendon, has just been named the senior political producer for CBS News, so they will be guiding our coverage over the next couple months. And congratulations, Jill.
Thanks, Nancy.
I look forward to talking to you even more than I already do.
Absolutely.
Thanks so much. We're going to turn now to President Obama and the Mideast peace talks. CBS News radio correspondent Peter Mayer is standing by at the White House, where last night President Obama said he's cautiously hopeful about today's summit. Peter, get us up to speed on what's happened so far.
Well, Secretary of State Clinton has convened the talks, Nancy, over at the State Department, a number of blocks away here from the White House, of course. As you said, President Obama gave them the send-off last night, gave them a dose of realism, said, you know, both sides have talked in principle about the importance of establishing a separate Palestinian state, but you haven't taken it much farther than that. Cautious optimism on the part of the White House, but you know, through the years, through the decades, in fact, we've seen this. My own experience here, I'm going to date myself, goes back to Begin and Sadat over that way on the South Lawn, shaking hands with Jimmy Carter standing in the middle. And since then, of course, we've seen Bill Clinton go through so much for the process also, and George W. Bush, Reagan gave it a stab, so we see where the process is now, just about almost where it's always been.
And so what reasons are the White House giving for, what reasons is the White House giving for this process to make any more headway than past events like this have had?
Well, they point to, despite the attack earlier this week that killed 4 Israelis, attack that Hamas, which of course is not a part of these talks, claimed credit for, relative calm in the region. They are also playing the Iran card. They know that, of course, the Israelis and the Palestinians are both very worried about Iran's nuclear ambitions and what it could portend for both of them if Iran got a bomb. So that's one of the things that they're also mentioning, and Israeli Prime Minister Netanyahu, in fact, has gone out of his way a couple of times to mention that publicly.
Got it. I want to turn back to politics for a moment, Peter, because you have an interesting piece up on CBSNews.com about First Lady Michelle Obama and her campaigning role. How big of a role is she going to play this election season? Well,
that's going to be decided as early as next week. I'm told that her staff and the Obama staff and the political advisors are going to get together and decide how to coordinate how much she's going to be involved with what the president's going to be doing. Going back to your conversations with Jill and Larry, you know, it's still up in the air how many Democrats want Barack Obama to campaign with them. We know that there are a number of Democrats who would love to have Michelle Obama campaign with them. It would be her first foray into politics, with the exception of one appearance in May for a Democratic Party event. Her first return to that since campaign 08, believe it or not.
And I suppose it's the typical scenario where the First Lady's popularity is far higher than her husband's because she doesn't have to make any of the difficult decisions. She's got something like 70–80% popularity right now?
Well, it actually has come down somewhat from that high mark at one point, but numbers aside, First Ladies are always among the most admired women in the country, as we know. And so she could carry a lot of heft in terms of firing up the core supporters, as they say in politics, firing up the base. Across the river from here in Washington, as a matter of fact, you have a Congressman, Gerald Connolly, who's going to be in a tight race. And he's in Virginia and has made no secret of the fact that he'd like to have her come over into his district and help him fire up the base. Joe Sestak, the Democratic Senate candidate in Pennsylvania, has spoken of having Michelle Obama come help him. Barbara Boxer, in a tight race in California, as you well know, also would like to have Michelle Obama at her side. Of course, there are drawbacks to this too. If Mrs. Obama goes out, I shouldn't say if, when she goes out on the campaign trail, she's going to be opening herself up to have Republicans take the gloves off, even though I don't think she's going to be, too direct in lobbing any, verbal grenades at specific Republicans.
Got it. All right. Well, Peter Mayer, White House correspondent for CBS Radio News, thank you so much for getting us up to speed with what's going on over there today.
Good to be with you. Thanks.
And finally today, one of our favorite series, Unplugged Under 40. Everyone's on Facebook these days, so we sent our own Kaylee Hartung to Facebook's Washington office for a behind-the-scenes look at the new political users they're signing up. Check it out.
Who is not using Facebook? Who should?
Who's not using Facebook who should? I don't know. Almost everyone's using Facebook now. So
He's not exaggerating. Facebook has 500 million users and counting.
So we're not worried about recruitment around here.
We're not worried about recruitment.
In Facebook's Washington office,
well, it's a lean operation. You're looking at
Adam Connor and Andrew Noyes make sure some of the site's most powerful users understand what a powerful tool this site can be.
There are more than 300 members of Congress who have a presence on Facebook, who are using it to connect with constituents, to raise money, to reach out to voters.
Congressman Bob Goodlatte is one of them.
I definitely am reaching an audience on Facebook that I wouldn't reach otherwise.
Goodlatte updates his Facebook page right from his iPad.
So I will utilize it to send them information about legislation I'm working on, or just to tell them that I'm going to be in the 4th of July parade in Stanton on Saturday.
Facebook's U.S. Politics page is a one-stop shop to see how politicians, officials, and campaigns are using the site. And it's a resource for staffers in charge of managing their boss's online presence.
Here's some frequently asked questions by politicians. Here's a checklist.
Even during August recess, politicians are logging on, posting photos of events back home, and polling fans for reaction to the president's speech on Iraq. As Washington focuses on midterm elections, Facebook is an easy and free way to reach voters.
Anyone that's been elected in the last few years when Facebook's been around knows that the internet and new media plays an important part in a campaign.
Take Florida's primary for the Democratic Senate nomination. Kendrick Meek's 19,000 fans trumped Jeff Green's 720 fans online, and it translated on primary day. Government agencies are looking for fan support too.
It's been a great effort by the U.S. government to get more of their agencies on Facebook.
Facebook's government page highlights these efforts.
You can see some of the things here. Here's the White House press secretary taking questions live after the Oval Office speech on Facebook. The FBI is using Facebook, the Department of Justice, Department of State.
I would say that they could find ways of using Facebook better. Rather than using it as a repository for press releases, they could engage with their audiences more.
One agency that's reaching out, FEMA. It's posting the very latest on Hurricane Earl.
Now, what tools do you have on the site that you wish people would use more?
So that would be our help section. It's at the bottom. Actually, I'll go ahead and show everyone. It's at the bottom of every page here. It says help. About 50% to 60% of the questions I get from people who know I work at Facebook have their answers here.
And you can bet that we'll be keeping up with Facebook's politics page leading up to the midterm elections. And Nancy, this D.C. office may be small, but you cannot deny the influence of this company. Just this week, their 26-year-old CEO, Mark Zuckerberg, took the top spot on Vanity Fair's annual list of the 100 most influential people around.
Unbelievable, and it is such a huge campaign tool. I mean, members of Congress are directing us there all the time. Every single one of them is using it this campaign season, I can guarantee you. Kaylee Hartung, thank you so much. And that's it for Washington Unplugged. You can follow us on Facebook as well as on Twitter at CBS Wash Unplug. And of course, you can join us here every day at CBSNews.com. I'm Nancy Cordes. Have a great day. Thanks for joining us.